Why was the desert so quiet? Not the natural silence of an empty wasteland, but a silence that pressed down on the skin, suffocating, waiting. She stood in it, the dry wind clawing at her face, carrying grains of sand that stung like glass. A place where the earth cracked like broken promises, where the horizon seemed endless, where even the sky burned in copper and gold. Captain Alexis Daniels knew this silence. It was the silence before judgment. But judgment today didn't come with bullets. It came with words. The tribunal room at Fort Bragg was a far cry from Afghanistan's killing fields. Cold, sterile, a space designed to strip soldiers down to numbers, to statistics. She stood at attention before a row of stern-faced officers, her back ramrod straight, though exhaustion carved deep lines into her face. 6 deployments had burned her nerves raw, but she wouldn't let them see weakness. Not now. Captain Daniels, Colonel Warren's voice cut across the chamber, sharp as a bayonet. Do you understand the gravity of the charges against you? Alex met his gaze, not flinching, not even blinking. Yes, sir. The list came down like hammer strikes. Abandoning protocol, disobeying orders, endangering her team, unauthorized tactical decisions. 4 men wounded because she thought her judgment outweighed command authority. She didn't argue, didn't remind them of the 17 who would have been zipped into body bags if she hadn't made those choices. Didn't say that looking through a scope taught her truths no desk officer's satellite could show. None of that mattered here. You were deployed as a sniper, Captain, Warren continued, his disdain thinly veiled. Not a commanding officer. 32 confirmed kills doesn't grant you authority to rewrite operation parameters. Her jaw clenched. 37 actually, but she stayed silent. Correcting him would serve no purpose. Women in special operations already walked on razors, tolerated for their skills, never truly embraced as equals. The heavy door opened, and with it came a shift in the room. Brigadier General James Sullivan entered, 62 years old, with eyes as sharp as desert steel. He didn't ask permission. He didn't need to. This hearing is suspended. Warren bristled. General, with all due respect. That wasn't a suggestion. Sullivan dropped a sealed folder onto the table. Captain Daniels has been reassigned, effective immediately. The officers erupted in whispers, confusion breaking their perfect masks. Alex stayed stone still, though her mind churned. Reassignment. That could mean exile behind a desk, or it could mean something worse. When the room cleared, Sullivan gestured. Walk with me, Captain. Outside, Fort Bragg was alive with routine. Soldiers drilling, engines roaring, none of them aware that one woman's career was dangling by a thread. Sullivan walked briskly, his steps steady despite his age. Your actions in Kandahar made you a pariah in certain circles, he said without preamble. But others see value in soldiers who think beyond protocol. I've reviewed your file. West Point graduate, top of your class in sniper school. Iraq, Afghanistan, exemplary record until now. He stopped at a crossroads, turning to her. Tell me why you countermanded those orders. Most generals never asked why, only what, but Sullivan wasn't most generals. Because the intelligence was outdated, sir, Alex replied, her voice steady. The target building had been reinforced within 48 hours. The insertion point was covered by at least 3 sniper positions. Going in as planned would have been suicide. Sullivan studied her with that sharp, unblinking gaze. And you're certain about what you saw? Yes, sir. I know the difference between shadows and shooters. For the first time, a ghost of a smile crossed his lips. That's why you're perfect for what I have in mind. He handed her the folder. She opened it, scanning the contents. Navy SEAL personnel files, a training exercise, desert survival, advanced combat readiness. 6 days in the wasteland. With all due respect, General, she said carefully, why me? There are others with desert experience. Because I need someone who sees what others miss, someone whose life has depended on it. His voice hardened. This isn't just training, it's evaluation. Her chest tightened. Evaluation meant judgment, another test, another chance to fail. When do I start? Transport leaves at 600. They shook hands. His grip was iron. Don't make me regret this, Captain. As he walked away, the weight settled on her shoulders. This wasn't a lifeline, it was a last chance. The desert didn't welcome them, it punished them. The Blackhawk's roar faded, leaving only the sun, already brutal, already merciless. A horizon of stone and sand stretched out, no roads, no shade, no lifeline. 9 men faced her in a loose semicircle, all Navy SEALs, all seasoned, all male. Their leader, Lieutenant Reeves, stepped forward. Hard eyes, rigid posture, a man welded to the chain of command. "Captain Daniels," he said, her rank dipped in ice. "We weren't informed of your participation." "That was intentional," Alex replied. "General Sullivan believes in realistic parameters. In the field, you don't always get the full picture." A ripple of unease spread through the group. They didn't like surprises. They liked her even less. "Let me be clear," she continued. "This isn't standard training. You're being evaluated for deployment. I've spent 4 years operating in terrain like this. My job is to keep you alive long enough to complete yours." Master Sergeant Blackwood, grizzled and unimpressed, folded his arms. "We've all done desert deployments. What exactly do you think you can teach us?" It was the challenge she'd expected. "Most training covers daytime operations," Alex said. "But your mission will involve nights in mountainous desert, days at 1:15, nights near freezing. Add in minimal water, unpredictable winds, and hostile routes. The environment will kill you before the enemy gets the chance." They exchanged skeptical glances, but not all. The sniper, Jason Hunter, watched her with professional curiosity. "Word is you managed 32 confirmations last deployment," he said. "That true?" Alex met his gaze. 37. A whistle from the youngest, 19-year-old Collins. Still green, still carrying wonder in his voice. "That's irrelevant," Reeves cut in sharply. His tone carried more than order, it carried territory. "Your command isn't in question, Lieutenant," Alex said calmly. "But my advice should be taken seriously. Lives may depend on it." She let the silence sit. Then, "Grab your gear, 5 minutes. First lesson starts with water." As they scattered, mutters followed her. Babysitter, publicity stunt. She ignored them. Competence would answer louder than words ever could. The march began. Sand to rock, heat rising like a hammer. Alex led them on a path that seemed random but wasn't. Every 20 minutes she pointed to details they'd overlooked. A patch of green signaling hidden water, rock formations that could mean shade, faint trails of predators. The desert spoke. They just hadn't learned to listen. By midday, when the heat pushed past 110, she called a halt. "Your canteens should be half empty," she said. "We won't reach water until tomorrow. How do you extend supply?" Blank stares. "There's always something," she muttered. She dug with her combat knife, 6 inches down, darker sand. A dried stream bed. Within minutes she'd set up a solar still, a plastic sheet, a container, a rock. 12 ounces in 3 hours, she explained. Not enough to refill, but enough to extend. Davis scoffed. "We're carrying 60 pounds of gear, and you want us to stop every few hours for science projects." Her voice stayed even. "I want you alive when your water fails. Redundancy isn't optional here." The medic, Reynolds, was already building his own still. "She's right. Dehydration is cumulative. You feel it too late." Reluctantly, the others followed. One by one, small victories. Only Hunter stayed alert, his scope sweeping the ridges. His expression tightened. "Problem?" Alex asked softly. "Movement, North Ridge, probably heat mirage." She followed his gaze. For an instant, something shifted against the skyline, then gone. "Keep watching," she whispered. "Mirages don't move laterally." He looked at her sharply. "You think we're being observed?" I think awareness keeps you alive. The wind carried sand across their boots, a silence too heavy, the kind that pressed, suffocated, waited. And Alex knew the desert wasn't done with them yet. What was hiding in the silence? That question stalked Alex as night dropped its curtain across the desert. Hours earlier, the heat had scalded their skin, but now the temperature plunged, cold as steel. The men pulled on thermal layers, breath turning visible in the air, faces pinched. They had expected fire and fury from the desert, not this bone-deep chill. "No fires," Alex instructed, her voice steady. "Heat signatures can be seen for miles. We'll use rock shelters." Reeves bristled. "We're aware of field procedure, Captain." "Then you know body heat won't cut it tonight. Hypothermia starts at 40 degrees and will be close." She showed them how to use the stones, heat absorbed through the day, released slowly through the night. Simple patterns of rock and cloth turned bare ground into pockets of survival. Blackwood watched her work, his skepticism cracking just a little. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. "Bedouins, Iraq. 3 weeks stranded behind enemy lines will teach you to adapt." Her hands worked by memory, muscle deepened by necessity. She didn't tell them how close she'd come to dying those weeks, how she'd listened to the desert until it finally whispered where water slept. Some truths stayed private. One by one, the men copied her. Even Davis, though he muttered about science projects again under his breath. Small victories, she reminded herself. As the camp settled into its makeshift shelters, she called the watch rotation. 4-hour shifts, Hunter and I first, Reeves, you and Wright second, Blackwood and Harris third, Mitchell and Reynolds fourth, Collins and Davis take dawn. No one argued, not after the day they'd had. Fatigue outweighed pride. The desert fell into uneasy quiet. Coyotes yipped somewhere beyond the rocks. Wind whispered over sand. Beneath it all, that same suffocating silence returned. Hunter lay prone beside her, rifle cradled in his hands, scanning the ridges. They spoke in murmurs, low enough for the others not to hear. "Shot consistency out here's different," Alex said, eyes on the horizon. "Canyons twist the wind. You have to read the sand, not just feel the breeze." Hunter gave a quiet grunt of agreement. "Explains a lot. Last deployment, rounds drifted inches off without warning. Command said it was gear variance." "Command prefers easy explanations." A long pause. He finally asked the question she'd known was coming. "Kandahar, what really happened?" She hesitated, the weight of her past pressing against her chest. "Intelligence failed. Command refused to adapt. I adjusted the plan without authorization, completed the mission. 4 wounded instead of 17 dead." Hunter's eyes flicked to her in the dim moonlight. "And now you're babysitting us in the desert. Now I'm making sure another team doesn't walk blind into the same trap." Her voice held no bitterness, just truth. The hours stretched. At times, silence felt heavier than words, yet it wasn't uncomfortable, not with Hunter. At least someone here understood the cost of seeing too much. By dawn, she woke the next rotation. As she stretched the stiffness from her limbs, she caught Collins watching her. The kid's eyes were curious, not hostile. When she handed him her scope to scan the horizon, his breath caught. "It's different. I didn't know the desert looked like this up close." "You'll learn," she said softly. "The desert hides nothing. It always tells the truth if you listen." The boy nodded, cradling the scope like it was something sacred. By the third day, exhaustion carved at everyone. Sun by day, frost by night, endless miles of rock and sand. Alex pushed them hard, harder than they expected. Equipment failures staged, simulated casualties, flash floods forcing detours. She created problems to reveal truths. Some men adapted. Reynolds, the medic, adjusted with quiet resilience. Mitchell, despite nerves, took every correction as a chance to improve. Even Blackwood, stubborn as a mountain, began to see the value in her methods. Others fought her at every step. Davis with his sneers, Reeves with his rigidity. His authority, once iron, began to crack. Pride kept him from bending, and the desert punished pride. The breaking point came on the fifth day. The canyon stretched before them like the throat of a beast, narrow and high-walled, shadows thick at its base. Reeves insisted it was the fastest path to the next checkpoint. Satellite imagery shows it clear, he argued. Alex scanned the narrowing passage, unease prickling along her skin. Imagery doesn't show depth. That's a kill box. One flash flood, one ambush, and we're trapped. There's no rain forecast for 100 miles. Forecasts don't mean a damn thing here. Storms form miles away. You can drown under blue skis. Blackwood backed her. She's right, Lieutenant. I've seen it. Rangers lost 3 men to water they never saw coming. But Reeves's jaw hardened. He wasn't hearing reason. He was hearing challenge. This is my operation. We proceed. Alex stepped into his path. Her voice was cold steel. No, we don't. The canyon wind carried the weight of the standoff. 2 leaders, 1 path, 9 men caught between. This isn't a democracy, Reeves snapped. I'm here to keep you alive, Alex shot back. And I can't if you march into a trap because of your pride. The men exchanged looks. Hunter shifted, restless. Even Davis looked uneasy. The air thickened, fragile, ready to break. Hunter broke it first. I'll scout both routes, settle it with intel instead of arguing over maps. Before Reeves could stop him, Hunter was already climbing, rifle slung, finding high ground to survey the terrain. His absence left the group in tense silence. Alex crouched beside Mitchell, checking comms. His face was pale. Something's wrong, he muttered. Signals degraded, feels like interference. What kind? She asked sharply. Active jamming, but that's impossible out here. Her chest tightened. Not desert silence this time, something worse. The presence of eyes they couldn't see. Hunter returned 20 minutes later, his expression grim. She's right. The canyon narrows to shoulder width, flood marks on the stone, no exits for 2 miles. He hesitated. And there were boot prints, fresh, within the last day. A chill swept through them. This sector's supposed to be uninhabited, Collins said, his voice shaking. Supposed to be, Alex murmured. Her gaze locked with Hunter. Both knew. Information withheld was never an accident. Reeves faltered. Pride gave way to unease. We take the southern route. The men reorganized, but unease clung like the dust. The desert was no longer empty. Someone had been here. Someone who left footprints near a path designed to kill them. By nightfall, the team made camp beneath an overhanging ridge. Alex pulled Blackwood aside, her tone low, urgent. Mitchell found a tracking beacon on his gear. Military grade, that means someone been close, very close. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. Why am I just hearing this? Because I needed confirmation before panic. Mitchell's checking the others discreetly. She looked him straight in the eye. If this escalates, the men will look to you. Be ready. The sergeant's jaw tightened. He gave a short nod. Hours later, as darkness thickened, Mitchell approached. His face said enough. 5 devices, he whispered. 5 planted on them, without any of them noticing. Alex stared out into the endless black desert. Someone was watching, not cartel smugglers, not local scouts, professionals, the kind who left no trace but the kind you always felt. Collins took watch beside her. He was quiet for a long time before blurting the question he'd been holding in. Is this how you got so many confirmed kills? By noticing things nobody else did. She glanced at him. The boy's eyes were wide, desperate to understand, desperate to prove he belonged. Noticing helps, she said softly, but mostly it's patience. The desert punishes haste. A sniper who rushes a shot is already dead. The kid nodded, swallowing hard. He wanted to believe it was that simple. He wanted to believe patience could save them all. But Alex knew better. Patience could only delay the inevitable. Because somewhere out there in the ridges, in the silence, eyes were watching, waiting. And they were no longer alone. Why hadn't they fired already? That question burned in Alex's mind as dawn painted the desert in pale gold. If someone was watching, if trackers were planted, why wait? Surveillance meant intent. But intent to what? The team moved with brittle silence. Every step felt heavier, the distance to the extraction zone closing in but never close enough. By mid-afternoon, the sun carved shadows deep into their faces. Their canteens were lighter, their patience thinner. 3 miles remained when Alex felt it, that invisible pressure like eyes pressing against her back. She dropped to one knee, feigning a boot adjustment. "Hunter," she called casually, "verify our coordinates against the ridgeline." The sniper raised his scope, slow, methodical, the seconds stretched like wire ready to snap. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Multiple positions on the northern ridge, elevated, overwatch angles, perfect sightlines." Alex's chest tightened. "Prepared or natural?" "Prepared," he said. "Someone dug in at least 48 hours ago." Reeves joined them, crouching low. "Problem." Alex pointed to the shallow depression ahead, the marked extraction zone, surrounded on 3 sides by rising terrain. "That's a kill box." Before Reeves could respond, Mitchell stumbled toward them, comms gear in hand. His face was pale. "Captain, Lieutenant, comms are dead. Not interference. Dead. Every channel." The desert wind howled, as if punctuating the words. Someone was closing the net. The crack of a rifle split the silence, sharp, surgical. Mitchell jerked, shock etched across his young face. His rifle clattered to the sand as crimson spread across his chest. For an instant the desert froze, a breath caught between life and death. Then chaos. "Contact right," Alex's voice cut through the shock. "Get to cover." The team scattered, instincts driving them to the nearest rocks. Reynolds sprinted, dragging Mitchell's limp body behind an outcropping. Blackwood barked orders. Davis swung his machine gun toward the ridges. Collins dove so hard he knocked the breath from his chest. Alex pressed herself against sandstone, eyes scanning. Nothing. No muzzle flash, no shadow, just heat haze and endless ridges. Whoever fired was gone, or worse, still there, invisible. "Hunter!" "North Ridge," he shouted back, scope sweeping. 800 meters. Shot was perfect, pro. Her stomach dropped. A random smuggler couldn't hit like that. A pro had made the shot. "Mitchell," she called. "Alive," Reynolds answered, voice strained. "Through and through, upper chest, missed the vitals, but he's bleeding hard." Alex froze. A pro at 800 meters didn't miss vital organs. They'd chosen to wound, not kill. "Deliberate." Reeves crawled toward her, rage burning behind his eyes. "What the hell is happening?" "We're being hunted," Alex said flatly, "by someone who knows exactly what they're doing." Her pulse pounded, but her voice stayed steady. Panic would kill them faster than bullets. She barked orders fast, sharp. "Hunter, eyes on target. Blackwood, cover our rear. Davis, Harris, east flank. Reynolds, stabilize Mitchell. Collins, assist. Reeves," she locked eyes with him, not blinking. "You keep them tight, no scatter." He didn't argue this time. Reynolds worked quickly, pressure bandage, IV fluids, stabilizing what he could. "He's got 6, maybe 8 hours if we get him out." "We're not getting him out," Wright muttered, face pale. "Not with comms down." Alex snapped her gaze to him. "You keep trying every encryption you know. Someone jammed us. That means someone's listening, and if they're listening, they're close." The medic's words echoed in her skull. 6 to 8 hours, not much more. Hunter shifted against the rock, still sweeping with his scope. "Captain, wound channels too clean. Entry and exit precise. Residue in the tissue." Training rounds. Alex's blood ran cold. Not meant to kill, meant to simulate. The thought slammed into her chest. This wasn't a random ambush. This was staged, a test. But tests didn't bleed like this. She fought to steady her breathing. If it was an evaluation, Mitchell's life was the currency. If it wasn't, then the enemy was far more sophisticated than Command had admitted. Reeves's jaw tightened. We move now before they pin us down. Alex shook her head. Move where? They've got every angle. That shot wasn't to kill, it was to box us in. They want to see what we do. Reeves glared at her. So what? You want us to sit here until they pick us off one by one? No, she said. I want us to adapt, to think. Hunter lowered his scope, grim. Multiple hides up there, at least 3. Military camouflage. Movement patterns look American. The silence that followed was heavier than the desert heat. American, Collins's voice cracked. You mean our own guys are shooting at us? Alex didn't answer. She couldn't, not yet. Instead, she studied the terrain, her sniper's eye dissecting every line. One truth was clear. Whoever they were testing limits, watching to see if she'd break. We split, Alex decided. Hunter and I take high ground, observation. The rest move east, cover to cover, toward extraction. We'll feed intel as we go. Negative, Reeves snapped. Classic divide and conquer, we stay together. You want 9 bodies in a neat line across open sand. That's not cohesion, Lieutenant. That's a mass grave. The two locked eyes, the desert heat searing the space between them. The team's fate balanced on the edge of their silence. It was Blackwood who broke it, his voice rough, measured. Sir, Mitchell loses blood every minute we argue. We move or we lose him. Reeves cursed under his breath. Then he gave a short nod. Fine, Daniels, Hunter, you get your observation post, the rest with me. The desert swallowed the argument as quickly as it had ignited it. Alex pulled Hunter aside. We need to reach that ridge unseen, west approach, less cover but out of their line. He checked his rifle, jaw tight. High risk. High reward, she countered. They moved slow, low. Each step through the heat felt heavier, sweat trickling down her spine. The desert stretched endless around them, every shadow a threat, every ridge a watching eye. 20 minutes later, they reached vantage. Hunter set his rifle, scope sweeping. Alex raised binoculars, breath steady despite the adrenaline pounding her chest. There, Hunter whispered. 2 o'clock, depression in the ridge, camouflaged. She followed his line. At first nothing, then a flicker, a shift of fabric, too clean, too deliberate. Military trained. She whispered it aloud. That's Delta Force doctrine. Hunter's jaw clenched, friendly. She lowered the glass, eyes narrowing. That's the question. Movement again. A figure adjusting equipment, efficient, controlled, too controlled for coincidence. Then something unexpected. A panel unfurled, bright square against the camouflage. Recognition signal. U.S. military standard. Hunter stiffened. They're ours. Alex's stomach churned. If they were theirs, why shoot Mitchell? Why jam comms? Why plant trackers? Before she could answer, the radio crackled. A voice, calm, deliberate. All elements, this is Observer Actual. Training exercise parameter Sierra has been initiated. Acknowledge. Alex's blood turned cold. They knew her name. They knew everything. She keyed her mic. Observer, we have a wounded operator. Request immediate medevac. Negative. Exercise continues under parameters. Medical situation within acceptable limits. The words hit her harder than any bullet. Acceptable limits. Mitchell's life was part of the plan. She lowered the radio slowly, eyes scanning the ridges again. The desert had been waiting all along. Not for them to survive, not for them to die, but for her to decide which mattered more. How much blood is worth a lesson? That thought haunted Alex as night fell heavy on the desert. The radio's last words echoed in her chest, acceptable limits. They hadn't said Mitchell's life mattered. They said it didn't matter enough. Around the makeshift camp, the men worked in silence. Reynolds hovered over Mitchell, hands steady though his eyes betrayed fear. The young comms operator's skin was pale, his breathing shallow, sweat soaking his shirt despite the cold. "BP's dropping," Reynolds muttered mostly to himself. "He's circling the drain." Alex crouched beside them. "How long?" The medic didn't look up. 4, maybe 5 hours without proper evac. Her stomach twisted. She'd seen men fade this way before, the slow slipping, the quiet surrender. She pressed the radio again. "Observer actual, this is Daniels. I'm declaring medical emergency priority 1. If this is an exercise, end it now." Static answered, then silence. Her jaw locked. They weren't listening. Or worse, they were listening and didn't care. Blackwood approached, lowering himself onto the sand beside her. His face was shadowed, grim. "They're not pulling us out, are they?" Alex shook her head. "Not unless I force their hand." He glanced toward Reeves, who sat apart, shoulders rigid, eyes fixed on the horizon like a man chained to his pride. "Then you'd better decide quick. Morale's bleeding as fast as Mitchell." Hunter slid down beside them, rifle across his knees. Saw movement again, North Ridge. 2-man team this time, watching, not engaging. Alex exhaled slowly. Professionals, observers, measuring every breath, every choice. She spoke quietly, but her voice carried steel. "They're not evaluating you. They're evaluating me. That's why I'm here. This isn't about readiness. It's about control." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "And if you don't play the game, then Mitchell dies for nothing, and the rest of you go down as collateral." The words tasted bitter, but she let them sit. They needed the truth. Reeves finally turned, his voice sharp. "You're assuming too much authority, Captain. I'm still in command here." Alex met his gaze without blinking. "Then command. Do something besides watch him bleed." The tension snapped taut. The men froze, caught in the pull of 2 leaders tearing in opposite directions. It was Collins, young, raw, desperate, who broke first. "Sir, with respect, she's the only one who seems to know what's happening. We need to listen." Reeves's jaw clenched. For a moment Alex thought he'd lash out, bark orders, reclaim control through volume. But he didn't. He looked at Mitchell, barely clinging to life, and something in his expression cracked. "Fine," he muttered, "you lead, but if this fails, it's on you." Alex didn't flinch. "It already is." She gathered them close, her tone low but commanding. "They want to see how we adapt under pressure. Fine, we'll adapt, but we're not pawns, we control the board." Hunter leaned forward. "What's the move?" She traced lines in the sand, crude but clear. "We build deception, make them think we're panicked, predictable. Meanwhile, we move Mitchell out under cover. If they want us boxed in, we'll show them shadows instead of bodies." Reynolds frowned. "How do you hide 9 men in open desert?" "You don't," she said. "You hide 6, and you make the other 3 look like 9. The plan unfolded with precision. Harris and Davis laid out decoys, rucksacks propped to mimic silhouettes, heat pads buried beneath to fool thermals. Blackwood dragged brush and sand across trails to distort tracks. Collins and Reynolds rigged comms to loop bursts of chatter, making it seem like movement in multiple directions. Hunter and Alex scouted ahead, marking the path toward a dry gully that curved south. Not safe, not easy, but cover enough to move Mitchell unseen. By midnight, the deception was set. Alex crouched beside Mitchell's stretcher, gripping the young man's cold hand. "You stay with us, soldier. You hear me? You stay." His eyes fluttered, unfocused, but his fingers twitched, faint pressure against hers. Enough. The team moved in silence, shadows slipping into the gully. Every sound, every scuff of boot, every rattle of gear felt amplified against the desert hush. Alex's pulse pounded, sweat slick on her palms despite the cold. Half an hour in, Hunter froze, raising a fist. The line stopped. He whispered, "Thermal sweep, drone overhead." Alex's chest tightened. They pressed flat against the stone, bodies blending into shadow. The faint hum passed above, lingered, then drifted east. She waited, breath locked in her lungs, until silence returned. Then she nodded, "Move." But Mitchell coughed, sudden, wet. Blood flecked his lips. The sound cut through the stillness like a flare. Hunter cursed under his breath. "They'll have heard that." Alex's heart hammered. She pressed her ear to the ground, listening. Footsteps, distant, closing. "Ambush," she hissed. "Positions." The men melted into rocks, rifles ready. Alex stayed with Mitchell, knife drawn, every nerve on fire. Shadows moved along the ridge, too controlled, too deliberate. Silhouettes she recognized not as enemies but as their own. American kit, American movement. "Observer actual," she whispered into the radio, barely audible. "You've made your point, end this now." No reply. The shadows closed in. A burst of gunfire shattered the night. Rounds smacked into stone, sparking, echoing through the canyon. The team returned fire on instinct, muzzle flashes carving the dark. Mitchell groaned, shuddering as Alex shielded him with her body. Then silence again. No cries, no casualties, just echoes fading into black. Hunter's voice cut through, ragged with fury. "They're firing live rounds." Reeves crawled to Alex, eyes wide. "This isn't training anymore." Her stomach clenched. It never was. The desert roared with silence once more, heavier, darker. They were being stripped bare of trust, of certainty, of humanity. She looked at her team, their faces etched with fear and exhaustion, but also defiance. "We're not their experiment," she said, voice low but fierce. "We're soldiers, and we don't leave our own behind." Mitchell's shallow breath rattled against the cold. Time was slipping, sand draining from the glass. The desert didn't care who lived or died, but Alex did. And before this night ended, someone would learn that lesson the hard way. Why hadn't they stopped the shooting? That question stalked Alex through every heartbeat, every shallow breath as the echoes of gunfire faded into the night. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was theater. Someone up there was watching, cataloging, judging, and Mitchell was still dying beneath her hands. Reynolds pressed fresh gauze against the wound, his gloves dark with blood. "Pressure's not enough anymore," he whispered. "We need transfusion. He won't make another hour without it." Blackwood's jaw tightened. "We don't have transfusion kits. Closest thing is IV fluids." Reynolds glanced up, meeting Alex's eyes. "Then we give him blood directly, field transfusion." Davis swore under his breath. "That's barbaric. He'll die either way." "Not if it's done right," Reynolds snapped. "I've done it before." His gaze flicked between the team. "He needs O-negative universal donor." A tense silence. Then Collins, voice shaking but firm, "I'm O-neg." The boy didn't hesitate. He just offered his arm. Reynolds grabbed his kit. "Captain, I need permission." Alex looked at Collins. The kid's face was pale, eyes wide but steady. He was terrified. He was also the only reason Mitchell might live. She nodded. "Do it." Reeves bristled. "That's reckless. You'll have 2 casualties instead of 1. Alex's voice cut sharp. "No, Lieutenant. I'll have 2 soldiers fighting for each other. That's the difference." Reeves fell silent, but not because he agreed. He just didn't have an answer. Reynolds worked fast, connecting tubing, securing lines, regulating flow by instinct and experience. Collins clenched his jaw as the blood drained from his arm. Mitchell's color shifted, faint but noticeable. His breathing steadied fractionally. Alex exhaled slowly, a weight lifting just enough, for now. Hunter crawled up beside her, eyes still fixed on the ridges. They're watching all of this, the transfusion, the panic, everything. Feels like they're collecting data more than testing readiness. "Then they'll see what I decide next," Alex said, voice low. Hunter's gaze flicked toward her. "And what's that?" She didn't answer, not yet. At dawn, the desert painted itself in blood-red light. The team was gaunt, hollow-eyed, their movements slowed by exhaustion and fear. But Mitchell still breathed, and Collins, though pale, stood on his own feet. They moved south along the gully, every shadow a potential muzzle flash, every ridge an executioner's perch. Twice, drones swept overhead. Twice, they froze, silent statues against the stone. By midday, Reeves broke the silence. This isn't sustainable. We're low on water, low on ammo, carrying dead weight. If this is an evaluation, the only thing they're learning is how to bury us. Alex stopped, turning on him. Mitchell's not dead weight. He's proof we don't abandon our own. Reeves's face twisted, rage sparking. You're blinded by sentiment. Mission comes first. Her voice dropped, cold steel. No mission is worth more than the men who bleed for it. The standoff rippled through the team. Some shifted toward Reeves, drawn to order. Others to Alex, drawn to survival with meaning. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The decision was made for them when a shot cracked the air. Collins screamed. His leg buckled, blood spraying sand. He collapsed, clutching his thigh. Sniper, Hunter shouted. West Ridge, 700 meters. Chaos erupted. The team dove for cover, rounds snapping into stone around them. Collins writhed, gasping, his rifle forgotten. Reynolds was on him in seconds, dragging him behind a boulder. Alex pressed her rifle to her shoulder, scanning the ridge. Nothing, just shimmer, just silence. The shooter was good, too good. Hunter's voice cut through, sharp. That's a kill zone shot, precise, controlled, but non-lethal again. He could have ended the kid with one trigger pull. Alex's gut twisted, training rounds at first. Now live fire but intentional wounding. They were being carved apart piece by piece. Observer actual, this is Daniels, she shouted into the radio. We have a second casualty. This stops now. Do you copy? Static. Then a calm voice, almost detached. Exercise continues. Casualty rates remain within acceptable thresholds. Proceed to extraction point. Her blood ran cold. Acceptable thresholds, again. Collins screamed as Reynolds tightened the tourniquet. The sound was raw, human, undeniable. It carried across the desert like a blade. Something inside Alex snapped. She keyed her mic again, voice shaking with fury. If this is a test, then hear this. I will not sacrifice my people for your metrics. You want evaluation. Evaluate this. She dropped the radio onto the sand, crushing it beneath her boot until it cracked, sparks dying in the dust. The team stared, shock, fear, and something else, the first spark of trust. Reeves hissed. Do you have any idea what you just did? That was insubordination on a level you can't walk back. Alex met his glare, unflinching. Good. Then maybe they'll finally understand where I stand. Hunter gave a faint, grim smile. You just drew a line in the sand, Captain. Not for them, Alex said quietly. For us. They moved again, slower now, carrying two wounded. Every step was agony, every mile a crucifixion. But the men followed, not Reeves, not command, Alex. By evening, the horizon bled orange. The extraction zone loomed ahead, a shallow basin marked by faint signal beacons. Relief rippled through the men until Hunter dropped to one knee, scope raised. Positions, he whispered. 4 hides elevated, ready to fire. Alex's chest tightened. Of course, the zone wasn't safety, it was the final test. Options, Blackwood asked. None good, Hunter said grimly. We walk in, we're cut down. We hold here, they starve us out. They've boxed us perfectly. The men looked to Alex, even Reeves. For the first time, his defiance faltered. She studied the ridges, her sniper's mind dissecting every angle. The observers wanted control, wanted her obedience, wanted her to choose the box. Instead, she whispered, we don't play their game. She turned to Hunter. Mark firing arcs, find me the gap. He scanned, precise, calculating. East slope, narrow, exposed for 200 meters but blind to at least 2 hides. We'd still take fire. Not if I distract them. The men froze. Reeves shook his head. You step into that basin, you won't walk back out. Maybe not, Alex said softly. But you will with Mitchell, with Collins, with everyone else. Hunter grabbed her arm. You can't. I can, she said, steady. Because I already chose, back in Kandahar, when I broke orders to save men no one else cared about. This is no different. Her voice dropped, fierce but quiet. I don't measure worth in thresholds. I measure it in lives. The desert wind howled around them, carrying the weight of her words. The plan formed fast. Blackwood would lead the wounded east under cover. Hunter would provide counter-sniper fire, drawing as much attention as possible. Alex, she would step into the open, bait in human form. As she tightened her gear, Reeves whispered almost to himself, "You're insane." "No," she replied almost gently. "I'm done being their experiment." The first step into the basin was the heaviest of her life. The men watched, breathless, as she walked into open ground, rifle slung, hands empty. A lone figure against endless desert. The ridges stirred, muzzle flashes sparked. Rounds kicked up sand around her boots, inches from flesh. She didn't flinch, she just walked, steady, unbroken. Every shot screamed evaluation, measurement, judgment. But Alex didn't give them the fear they wanted. She gave them defiance. And in that defiance, she gave her men a chance. Why weren't they killing her? The thought struck Alex as sand kicked up inches from her boots, bullets stitching a path across the basin. Each shot was precise, surgical. A demonstration, not an execution. They wanted to see how far she'd walk before breaking. She didn't stop. She walked with measured steps, back straight, face lifted toward the ridges as if daring the shooters to end it. Behind her, the team moved. Blackwood and Reeves half-carried Mitchell. Collins limped with Reynolds at his side. Davis and Harris covered flanks. Hunter lingered just long enough to fire controlled bursts toward the muzzle flashes, forcing the unseen observers to shift. "East route clear," Hunter shouted. Alex gave the faintest nod. Then another shot cracked, grazing her sleeve, tearing fabric but sparing flesh. A warning. Her heart hammered, but her pace never faltered. She could feel them watching, tallying, measuring. Each step was a defiance, each breath a refusal. Through the commotion, the radio on Reeves's vest crackled to life. A calm, detached voice. "Captain Daniels, you are exceeding parameters. Halt your advance." Reeves froze, eyes darting to her. The voice continued, unshaken. "This is your final warning. Return to the extraction zone or be classified non-compliant." Alex turned her head just enough to meet Reeves's gaze. "Smash it." He hesitated, caught between fear and loyalty. "Now." With a snarl, Reeves ripped the radio free and hurled it against the rocks. It shattered in sparks. The desert swallowed the sound. That was the moment everything changed. The next volley wasn't warning fire. It was lethal. Rounds tore into stone around the evac team, shrapnel slicing cheeks and arms. Collins cried out as his shoulder jerked back, blood blooming anew. Harris dropped flat, screaming, a bullet tearing into his calf. Hunter's rifle cracked in response, muzzle flash searing the dusk. "Two shooters down," he shouted, his voice ragged. "But more, there's more." The basin erupted in chaos. Real gunfire, real blood. The test had become war. Alex dropped to one knee, scanning the ridges. Her sniper's eye caught a flicker of movement, too deliberate, too controlled. She raised her rifle, squeezed. The figure toppled, rolling down the rocks. Gear clattered, helmet rolling loose. The sight punched the air from her lungs. Not foreign kit, not desert garb, American, advanced optics, patches blacked out but unmistakably theirs. Her voice cracked over the chaos. "They're ours." The team faltered, confusion rippling like shockwaves. Reeves shouted back, "You mean we're shooting at our own people?" Another volley answered. Rounds tore into the sand around them, one striking Reynolds square in the chest. He gasped, fell back, blood soaking his vest. "No," Alex sprinted, skidding to his side, pressing her hands hard against the wound. His eyes were wide, desperate, searching hers. "I've got you," she whispered fiercely, voice shaking. "Stay with me, just stay." But his breaths came shallow, rattling, slipping. Blood bubbled against her palms. Reynolds's lips moved. She bent low, straining to hear. His voice was barely air. "Don't let them turn you." Then nothing, his chest stilled. Alex's throat closed. She pressed harder, uselessly, refusing to accept. But the truth sat cold in her hands. The medic was gone. The desert roared in silence again, heavier than gunfire. Blackwood's voice was raw, guttural. "We can't hold, we'll lose everyone here." Her vision blurred with rage and grief. Reynolds's blood was still warm on her hands, acceptable thresholds. The phrase echoed like a curse. "No, not anymore." Alex rose slowly, her body trembling but her voice iron. "We break the box, we take the ridge, no more running." Reeves stared at her like she was insane. "That's suicide." She turned on him, eyes blazing. "So is waiting to be culled like cattle." The men hesitated, caught between terror and trust. Then Hunter spoke, low but firm. "She's right. We end this on our terms or we die on theirs." Blackwood tightened his grip on his rifle. "With you, Captain." One by one, the others nodded. Even Reeves, though his eyes burned with resentment, not belief. Alex crouched, drawing quick lines in the sand. "Hunter and I suppress left flank. Blackwood, you lead Collins and Davis up the south slope. Reeves, take Harris, get him to cover, then push east. We converge on the ridge, drive them off position. No more hiding." The men absorbed the plan with grim nods. There was no arguing now, only survival. "On my mark," she whispered. The desert held its breath. Then she raised her hand, dropped it. Gunfire ripped the silence apart. Hunter's rifle barked, precise, deadly. Alex's scope aligned on a flash of movement, squeeze, recoil, figure down. The team surged, boots pounding stone, voices shouting over the chaos. The ridge answered with fury. Muzzle flashes sparked in the shadows, rounds tearing rock, slicing air. Collins stumbled but kept moving, blood trailing behind him. Blackwood hauled him by the vest, dragging him up the slope like dead weight. Alex shifted, fired again, the recoil slamming into her shoulder. Another figure toppled, gear clattering. She caught a glimpse of his face before it vanished into dust. American. No doubt now. They weren't enemies, they were executioners. Her pulse roared in her ears, rage blinding, grief burning. Reynolds, Mitchell, Collins, all pawns on a board she hadn't chosen. Another shot cracked past her head. She dropped low, teeth gritted. Hunter shouted, "Two left, northeast, hide." "I've got them," she barked. She crawled forward, found the angle, lined up her shot. Breath steady, hands iron, she squeezed. The figure slumped, lifeless. The last shooter broke cover, retreating fast across the ridge. Alex tracked, fired, the round caught his pack, sent him sprawling. The desert fell still again. Silence but not peace, never peace. The team regrouped atop the ridge, battered, bloodied, fewer than before. Reynolds was gone, Mitchell unconscious, Collins barely standing, Harris maimed. Reeves's voice cracked, disbelief etched deep. What the hell was this? Why would they? Why would our own? Alex scanned the fallen. Their gear carried no insignia, no names, just black patches stripped of identity, ghosts in American uniforms. Her voice was hollow, raw, because they wanted to see how far we'd go before breaking, to see if I'd fold or fight. Blackwood's face hardened, then they got their answer. Alex wiped blood from her hands, though it clung stubbornly. She looked at what remained of her team, their faces lined with exhaustion, grief, rage. "We're not done," she said softly. "They won't stop until they've taken everything, unless we end it first." Hunter's gaze locked with hers. "And how do you end a ghost operation?" She looked at Reynolds's body, at the lifeless men on the ridge. Her voice came quiet but fierce. "You drag them into the light, even if it costs you everything." The desert wind howled, carrying grief, carrying fury. and Alex knew she'd crossed the point of no return. Not a pawn, not a test subject, not anymore. Now she was the reckoning. How many lives could she carry before she broke? Alex asked herself that as the dawn bled gray over the desert. Reynolds's body lay shrouded in a poncho liner, blood still damp beneath it. The medic who had kept them alive now lay silent, and his absence was louder than gunfire. The men stood in a half-circle, heads bowed, faces hollow. Collins clutched his rifle too tightly, knuckles white, his wounded leg trembling under the strain. Blackwood's jaw was clenched, eyes red. Even Reeves' stiff, rigid Reeves couldn't hide the shadow etched across his face. Alex forced her voice steady, though her chest felt carved hollow. "We can't bury him, not here. The ground's stone and time against us, but we carry him. He doesn't get left behind." No one argued. They lifted Reynolds's body, lashed it between poles. The weight was more than physical. Every step south was agony. Mitchell's stretcher dragged. Collins stumbled. Harris limped, his injured calf wrapped in bloody bandages. The desert mocked them, unending sand, unbroken heat, silence that felt heavier with each mile. Alex led, but inside she was unraveling. Every decision she made, every command she gave, echoed with ghosts. Kandahar. 17 lives she'd saved then at the cost of her career. Now Reynolds gone under her watch. Mitchell slipping closer to death. Collins scarred before his life had begun. How many before the lesson is learned? Hunter fell into step beside her, voice low. "You can't carry it all, Captain." Her eyes stayed fixed ahead. "I have to." He shook his head. "That's what they want, to break you under the weight, to prove you're too human for the job." She almost laughed, bitter, empty. "And if I am?" "Then you're the only one worth following," he said simply. The words struck deeper than she expected. Not comfort, truth. By midday the sun blazed merciless. Water was nearly gone. Every canteen was a hollow echo. Blackwood called for a halt under a fractured overhang. Shade enough for survival, not for rest. Reeves approached Alex, his face gaunt, lips cracked. "We're not going to make it like this. Not with 2 wounded and a body." Her throat tightened. "We're not leaving them." He lowered his voice, hard but not cruel. "This isn't sentiment, it's reality. Mitchell's hours from death. Collins can't walk. Harris is half crippled. Carrying Reynolds slows us all. If we keep this up, none of us will reach extraction." The words cut deep because part of her knew they were true. But saying it out loud felt like betrayal, like surrender. She turned sharply, her voice cold. "I won't discard them. You want to make that choice, Lieutenant, you say it to their faces." Reeves didn't answer. He just stared at her, anger and helplessness twisted together. Then he walked away. The silence he left behind was heavier than words. Hours later, as the team staggered across another barren stretch, the horizon shimmered. For a moment, Alex thought it was a mirage, but then Hunter's voice sharpened. "Movement, East Ridge, 3 figures." The team froze, weapons raised, breath held. Through her scope, Alex caught them, silhouettes against the haze. Not enemies, not observers, civilians. She exhaled slowly. Bedouins, a family likely, 2 adults, 1 child leading goats across the barren land. The boy stopped, staring at the armed soldiers with wide eyes. His mother pulled him close, fear etched in every movement. Collins whispered, "They're just people." Blackwood lowered his rifle. "We're in their home, we're the ghosts here." The family hurried away, vanishing into the dunes. The silence they left felt different, not hostile, just human. Alex swallowed hard. For a moment she envied them. To live in this land without orders, without thresholds, without the weight of decisions measured in blood. But envy had no place here. Survival demanded focus. By late afternoon, Mitchell convulsed. Reynolds would have known what to do. Without him, Reynolds's kit was all they had. Reynolds's absence was everywhere in their faltering pace, in the panic that rippled as Mitchell's breathing faltered. Alex knelt, gripping his clammy hand. His eyes fluttered, barely conscious. She whispered fiercely, "Stay with us. You're not leaving here, not like this." But his lips only moved soundlessly, breath a fragile thread. Reynolds's ghost echoed in her head, "Don't let them turn you." The team pressed on, but the desert pressed harder. The sun sank, bleeding orange and crimson across the sky. Shadows stretched long and sharp. That was when Hunter froze again. Drones. They looked up, two of them circling like vultures, lights winking faintly against the dusk. Reeves cursed, "They'll track us to the end, we're just targets now." Alex's voice was hoarse but steady. "Not targets, evidence." Blackwood frowned. "What do you mean?" She met their eyes, each one hollowed by exhaustion and fear. "We don't reach extraction for ourselves. We reach it so the world sees what they did here. So Reynolds isn't just a body in the sand. So Mitchell's blood isn't just acceptable loss." The men stared at her, silent. The truth was brutal, but it was also hope. Collins whispered, "And if nobody waiting?" Her voice cracked, but she forced the words. "Then we walk anyway, because dignity isn't what they give us, it's what we carry." The night fell like a curtain. They marched under stars sharp as glass, each one a reminder of how small they were, how vast the silence stretched. Mitchell's breaths grew weaker. Collins stumbled more. Harris leaned on Blackwood's shoulder. Every step was borrowed time. At midnight, Reeves approached Alex again. Not with anger this time, with something closer to despair. "Why you?" he asked quietly. "Why put this on you?" She didn't answer at first. The stars blurred above her. Finally, she whispered, "Because I wouldn't break in Kandahar. Because I saved men I wasn't supposed to. And they don't forgive that. They test it. They want to know if I'll still disobey when the cost is higher." Reeves studied her, his face unreadable in the dark. Then, almost reluctantly, he said, "You already answered." The words lingered, heavier than the silence. By dawn, they reached high ground overlooking the final valley. And there it was, the extraction zone. A barren flat of sand marked by faint beacons. Helicopter dust scars cut across the earth. Salvation or the last trap. Hunter raised his scope, scanning. Movement, south perimeter, 2 teams, armed. Alex's chest tightened. Whoever waited down there wasn't rescue. It was judgment. The men shifted uneasily. Blackwood muttered, "Feels like walking into the gallows." Alex's throat ached, but her voice was steady. "Then we walked together." They stood at the ridge, battered, bleeding, fewer than before, staring down at what could be the end. The desert wind howled, tugging at their gear, carrying ghosts with it. Mitchell's shallow breaths, Reynolds's silence, Collins's limp, Harris's pain. Everything had led here. Alex drew a long breath, her voice low, steady. "We finish this. Whatever it is, whatever it costs, we finish it together." The men nodded, slowly, grimly. Then they began the descent. Toward the beacons. Toward the unknown. Toward the end. Why had she survived Kandahar if not for this moment? The question pressed heavy on Alex's chest as she led what remained of her team down the ridge. The extraction beacons glowed faint in the distance, pale fire against endless sand. But it wasn't safety they marked. It was theater. Hunter whispered what they all saw. 2 teams, perimeter set, not rescue, not friendlies. Armed silhouettes moved with perfect coordination. American posture, American rifles, men who looked like them but weren't with them. Shadows in the same uniform, stripped of names, stripped of identity. Collins limped, his young face drawn with pain but lit by something harder now, the first glint of defiance. Harris dragged his leg, each step agony. Mitchell, unconscious, rattled on his stretcher. Reynolds lay behind them, silent weight lashed to poles. Every mile had bled them raw, and now here at the end they faced judgment again. Alex slowed, raising her fist. The line halted, breathing ragged, weapons raised on instinct. She let the silence sit. Then a voice rang out across the valley, amplified by a loudspeaker. Calm, detached, familiar. Captain Daniels, Lieutenant Reeves, Master Sergeant Blackwood, you've reached final phase. Place your weapons on the ground and approach. This concludes the evaluation. The men froze. Confusion rippled like a wound reopening. Davis whispered, "Evaluation after this." His voice cracked. "After Reynolds is dead." Alex's throat burned. She took a step forward, shouting back across the valley, "You call this an exercise? You call these lives acceptable?" The loudspeaker answered without hesitation. "Casualty rates remain within operational thresholds. Your performance will be reviewed by command. Lay down your arms." Reeves's hands trembled. He looked at Alex, face pale. "If we don't, they'll cut us down." Hunter's voice was low, sharp. "They'll cut us down anyway. We're loose ends now." Blackwood spat into the sand. "Bastards." The valley hung heavy with choice. Surrender, defiance. Both smelled like death. Alex's mind flashed back to Kandahar. The broken building. The orders to push a plan that would have buried her men under rubble. The decision she made then, to break command, to save lives, to carry the stain of disobedience forever. "Don't let them turn you." Reynolds's last words whispered like wind in her ears. Her chest rose steady. She turned to her men, meeting each set of eyes, exhausted, wounded but still alive. "They're not our judges," she said quietly. "They're just shadows, men who gave up their names to become weapons, but we are not shadows, we don't lay down." Reeves's face twisted with fear. "Then what? We fight an army with 6 half-dead men." Alex's gaze didn't waver. "We fight because we are men, because we don't accept being turned into thresholds and metrics. We fight because Reynolds deserves more than silence." The decision wasn't unanimous. It didn't need to be. One by one they nodded. Blackwood, Hunter, Collins, even Reeves, trembling, gave the faintest dip of his head. Alex turned back toward the valley, rifle in her hands, voice carrying across the sand. "You want evaluation? Here it is." The first shot came from the ridge, a spark of muzzle flash, a hiss across the air. But this time Alex was ready. She dropped to one knee, sighted, and fired. Her round struck true, dropping the silhouette before the echo even faded. The valley erupted. Gunfire tore across the sand, tracer rounds streaking red through the dawn. The survivors scattered into what little cover the desert offered: shallow depressions, broken rocks. Hunter returned fire, controlled, surgical, his shots punching holes in the perimeter. Blackwood barked orders, dragging Collins into cover, firing bursts to keep heads down. Alex moved like she had in every deployment before, calm inside the storm, fury in her veins but precision in her hands. Her rifle cracked again and again, each shot measured, each target a ghost erased. But they were outnumbered. For every shadow she dropped, another shifted into place. Muzzle flashes winked like stars in the haze. Bullets chewed sand around them, chipped stone, tore air. Davis screamed, his body jerking as a round slammed into his side. Blackwood pulled him back, cursing, blood soaking his hands. "We can't hold," Reeves shouted, voice breaking. "Yes, we can," Alex's roar cut through the chaos. "Because we don't leave each other. Not now, not ever." Her words weren't just command. They were defiance, they were life. Hunter's rifle cracked again. 2 down, northeast flank thinning. The tide wavered. For the first time, Alex saw hesitation in the shadows' movements. Precision faltered, discipline cracked. She seized it. "Push, left ridge now." They surged, battered bodies forcing one last climb. Blackwood hauled Collins with brute strength, Reeves covering despite his trembling hands. Harris dragged himself on raw will. Hunter carved paths with his scope, every shot clearing inches of ground. Alex led, breath ragged, eyes burning. She reached the ridge edge, threw herself over cover, and came face to face with one of the shadows. For a heartbeat they stared at each other. Same uniform, same rifle, same flag once worn on the shoulder. only his was stripped bare, erased. He hesitated, just for a second, enough for Alex. She drove her knife into his vest seam, felt him crumple. She wrenched her weapon free, turned it on another. The ridge fell in fire and fury. The team fought like men stripped of everything but dignity. Shadows broke, some fell, others retreated. And then silence, real silence. No gunfire, no commands, just the ragged breaths of survivors under a bleeding sky. The last of the shadows vanished into the dunes, ghosts retreating to wherever they had come from. No bodies left behind, only blood, weapons, silence. The valley was theirs. Alex stood, chest heaving, rifle trembling in her grip. She looked at her men, fewer than before, broken, bleeding, but alive. Collins leaned against Blackwood, pale but upright. Reeves sat hard in the sand, staring blankly, his rifle forgotten. Hunter stood tall, eyes burning with fury and faith. Harris, leg torn and shaking, raised a fist weakly, defiantly. And Mitchell, still breathing, faint but breathing. Alex's throat tightened. They had survived, against the desert, against their own, against thresholds meant to break them. Blackwood's voice was rough. "What now, Captain?" She looked out across the endless horizon. The beacon still glowed faintly, meaningless now. No rescue waited, no command, only desert. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Now we carry our dead, we carry Reynolds, we carry the truth of what they did here, we carry each other." The men listened. No one argued because they knew. Alex raised her eyes to the horizon. The desert wind whipped across her face, stinging, relentless. She thought of Kandahar, of orders broken, of 17 lives saved, of Reynolds's last words. "Don't let them turn you." Her chest rose, heavy with grief, with defiance, with something close to peace. Because they hadn't turned her, not in Kandahar, not here. And as the survivors gathered their dead and began the endless march across sand and silence, Alex's voice whispered inside her own head. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The desert swallowed the words, but it would never swallow their meaning.